Hello there and good morning everyone. Today I wanted to speak with you and share a chapter from the Hartmann's Our Life with Mr. Gurdjieff, and it's a fascinating chapter for a number of reasons. The chapter is chapter 18 and the title is English Interest Grows, and I couldn't think of a very good title for the video, so I've just in a sense described what's contained in the chapter. And so the chapter begins with Olga de Hartmann's retelling of Orage's first meeting with Gurdjieff and what Gurdjieff makes him do. And again, from the thumbnail and title, I'm sure you've worked that out. And Gurdjieff would have a propensity of doing this for people. People would come with expectations and certain identifications, and Gurdjieff would attempt to, smash them down in a sense, really, and let the person sit and observe themselves. Then we'll go on to some question and answers, and you don't often find Gurdjieff answering direct questions. Often he's quite evasive and sort of tiptoes round the question, but in this instance with Orage, some English students have come from England. Obviously they've come with Orage and they've been sent by Ouspensky. They've been learning about the Gurdjieff fourth way and ideas through Ouspensky, and of course they wanted to meet the man G, or Mr. Gurdjieff, or Georgi Jovanovic, and so they've come to the Prieuré to meet and speak. Amongst those, or the very first question, is a wonderful insight into the practical benefits of the fourth way work. And someone asks, has Mr. Gurdjieff's educational system produced an example of the type of man that he wishes to develop? And Gurdjieff goes on to answer this and state 3 benefits of following the fourth way. So I think that's very helpful. And then again, there's some more questions and answers. But before we get into all of that, I want to just read a brief passage from Thomas de Hartmann where he's speaking about life at the Prieuré and the benefits, the full immersion, and how, again, how much it benefits the soul and the being and the body to be there under the supervision of Gurdjieff, with him knowing everyone's capacities and propensities, and in a sense facilitating spiritual growth, raising of consciousness, and development of being. And hello there, Graham, Fortune and Substance for the Soul. A very good morning to you and welcome. And so I've got the text here for this passage, which I'm going to read for you. At the Prieuré, all these constantly changing works engulfed the whole person. Life outside somehow ceased to exist. Reclusiveness of life in the Prieuré was totally unlike that of a monastery, where external life is rejected and there is concentration on prayer, abstinence, and elevation of thought. In the Prieuré, the life of a person, like a ball, was thrown from one situation into another. Our prayer was the work which concentrated together all spiritual and physical forces. The variety and constant change of tasks continually reawakened us. We were given minimal hours of sleep, just enough to give strength for the following day. Instead of abstinence, there was spending of forces of the utmost, attentive work, renewing energies as they were spent in the manner of a rhythmic flywheel. There was no rejection of life within the Prieuré. On the contrary, life was expanded to the utmost intensity and spirituality. And I wanted to share that to begin because it gives a very well-rounded perspective of what life would have been like at the Prieuré, in the sense that no one could get into, unless Gurdjieff wanted to again tear down some of your inner beliefs, he would make you do something that you really dislike in order to push through that. But there was work from sun up to sundown, and then once the sun went down, everyone would have their evening meal and then go for movements at 8 p.m, I believe, in the study house, and go through the movements until late, a few hours sleep, get up and do it all over again. But it's not mechanical. It wasn't mechanical. It was used for awakening. And so, I'm just going to read the chapter English interest grows, and we begin with Olga de Hartmann speaking about Mr. Orage, and it's very interesting how Gurdjieff treats Mr. Orage on their first meeting. Of course, Alfred Orage would have been the editor of the New Age, I think, was the publication, and so he would have, what's the saying, his reputation would have preceded him, and he would have come, being the thinking man, writer, editor, and this is how Gurdjieff welcomed him to the Prieuré. On the terrace of the Prieuré, Mr. Gurdjieff spoke for the first time with Orage, who had just come from London. I had to translate for them, as Mr. Gurdjieff still spoke little French or English. Orage stayed with us. As a job for him to do, Mr. Gurdjieff told him to dig a ditch not far from the kitchen garden, because, he said, the rain from the little hill always made too much water to collect. He showed him the place and the length and width of the ditch. Orage had never had a spade in his hands before, but he began the project with great zeal. Every morning when Mr. Gurdjieff went to the kitchen garden to look at how the work was going on, he would tell him, "Well, well, very good, Orage." But the third or fourth day he told him, "Look, the edges of the ditch are not equal. You must take a little piece of string and measure across so that the edges will be quite equal." Orage did this, and the next day when Mr. Gurdjieff passed, he stopped and said, "Orage, it is very good. Now put the earth back in. We don't need this ditch any more." Mr. Gurdjieff had done the same thing to us when he destroyed all the decorations we had made for the struggle of the magicians. And again, dig the dirt. The man who introduced me to the work, his phrase, he would often say, "You got to dig the dirt." He was a very Martian energy, and he would say, "Efforts, work. Vorsprung durch Technik." You've got to dig the ground. You have to make efforts. You have to do it. You have to do the work. And so I wonder how Orage would have reacted when Gurdjieff said, "Yeah, we don't need it anymore. Put all the earth back in now and, come with us." So I think that's a very, again, very insightful look at how Gurdjieff would give to each individual just what they needed to evolve. And so now we come on one last bit here from Olga. Olga de Hartmann says, "During the next year, the English people sent money, and with an extra sum from my wealthy cousin, we were able to buy the Prieuré with a mortgage." So they ended up actually having to buy, or being able to buy. Soon more English people sent by Ouspensky came from London. At the same time, Catherine Mansfield also arrived. And again, we read about that briefly the other day. The English asked Mr. Gurdjieff some questions. It is interesting to see which questions concern them the most at the time. Orage and I interpreted for Mr. Gurdjieff and recorded the questions and answers as follows. And so here in the book Our Life with Mr. Gurdjieff by Thomas and Olga de Hartmann, there is a question and answer session that Mr. Gurdjieff gives to the English pupils who have been sent over from Ouspensky in England, who have been learning with Ouspensky. And the first question has great significance, I would argue, because it offers up some practical benefits of the work. And I will share that answer that Gurdjieff gives now. The question is, has Mr. Gurdjieff's educational system produced an example of the type of man that he wished to develop? With regard to the results achieved by pupils here during this short period of time, first of all, we can note 1. Improvement in their health. That means that there was established a basis to improve their future health from the chronic diseases that they had. The following can serve as examples. Improvement from obesity, the strengthening of their weak memories, and bringing in order their disordered nerves. 2. The second result is the enlargement of their horizons. In general, people have a very narrow outlook on life. It is as if they wear blinkers which prevent them from seeing more. Here, thanks to a great variety of new conditions of work, and thanks to many other things, this field of view is enlarged as if a new horizon is acquired. And third, a new interest has been created. The majority of people who came here had quite lost any interest in and for life. This is also because they had such a narrow outlook on life. Here a new interest is born for them. The result had to be stressed as the most important, Mr. Gurdjieff had said. And the passage continues, and hello there, good morning, Sophia. The passage continues. It is possible to list 1,000 examples of results acquired by people from being here, but most of the results would come from these three fundamental ones. That is why it is not important to list them. Since the Institute has been in existence for a very short time, it is only recently that some pupils have emerged who measure up to the results I expected. But generally speaking, there are no limits for self-perfecting, and so each attainment is only a temporary state. People in their outer life are not tied to the Institute. They can play any social role, fulfill any job, have any occupation that occurs in life. Many people live their own independent life and work at the same time. The difference lies only in that if, before, someone was a good shoemaker, by becoming a pupil of the Institute and continuing to learn, he will become a different shoemaker. If someone was a priest, he will become a different priest. And so I wanted to share that because it's, again, very powerful, these things. And I think this was in 1925, 1924 or 1925. And you could argue that 100 years on, the saeculum turns, and even in this very day, people would benefit from, going somewhere and having limited food so they can't maintain their obesity and their dietary habits of sugar and fats and, just out of control eating. The second is the memory. One's memory will improve. And the one that I think is most powerful and what I try to help people with here at the channel is the enlargement of one's horizons. If you've never left your town or your village or your job and you've worked in the same job and gone to and fro with the same impressions every single day, then you may have narrow horizons. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but horizons are there to be broadened, in my opinion. And there is unlimited potential in the universe and for the human being, whether that's in a spiritual capacity or in a material capacity or an emotional capacity. We can do great things with this life. And so I think with that passage and those questions and answers and the three aspects that are practical that we can bring into life. And again, I'll repeat that if you're a postman, which I am, by becoming acquainted and begin doing the work, you'll become a better postman. If you're a carpenter, you'll become a different kind of carpenter. And as we said here, if you're a shoemaker or a priest, you will become a different shoemaker or priest. Question 2. How do you explain the despair that some pupils of the Institute fall into at the beginning? Answer. There exists a principle in the Institute about which I will tell you at once, and then this period of despair will begin to be quite clear to you. A man generally lives with a foreign mind. He has not his own opinion and is under the influence of everything that others tell him. The example was given of a man who thinks badly of another person only because someone else has said bad things about that person. In the Institute, you have to learn how to live with your own mind, how to be active, to develop your own individuality. Here in the Institute, many people come only on account of their foreign mind. They have no interest of their own in the work at all. That is why when a man arrives at the Institute, difficult conditions are created and all sorts of traps laid for him intentionally, as for Mr. Orage with the ditch, so that he himself can find out whether he came because of his own interest or only because he heard about the interest of others. Can he, disregarding the outside difficulties that are made for him, continue to work for the main aim? And does this aim exist within him? When the need for these artificial difficulties is over, then they are no longer created for him. The periods of despair in life are the result of the same cause. The man lives with a foreign mind, and his interest arises accidentally owing to some outside influence. As long as the influence continues, the man seems quite satisfied. But when for some reason or other the outside influence ceases, his interest loses all meaning and he falls into despair. What is his own cannot be taken away from him and is always his. This, does not yet exist. Only when this begins to exist is it possible for these periods of despair to disappear. And there's an analogy in Search of the Miraculous about the container with salt crystals in. And if you leave the container, if you put loads of salt crystals in the container and stir it up, then they're all whizzing around and constantly fluctuating and moving around. Whereas if you let it still, the salt crystals all begin to sink to the bottom. And as they sink to the bottom, Gurdjieff would say that eventually this salt will crystallize at the bottom, and then you can stir up the beaker, the pot, and nothing will happen to that because it's crystallized. And this is what Gurdjieff is saying here. What is his own and cannot be taken away from him and is always his, this does not yet exist. And if you've been in the work for some time and have read the books and done your own individual efforts, you will realize and have verified very clearly that you now have something that is your own, that cannot be taken away. And I would argue that this is of great benefit for one navigating this world and this life. And I would argue that's down to Mr. Gurdjieff and his ideas, again, through all the canonical texts, through Ouspensky, through the Hartmanns, through Nickel, through Bennett, through all of these texts. We have acquired something for life, something in life, but not of life. And so I myself have verified this, that I have now something that I didn't have before the work. And as Gurdjieff says, this does not yet exist. And once it begins to grow and develop in oneself, then you'll realize that this work is much more than a series of books, a series of practices, and a series of recollections of a man named Gurdjieff. It's a living thing that if you bring it into your life, as it says, it cannot be taken away and is always yours. Hello, good morning, Laurie, and thanks, Sophia. The next, question 3. Does Mr. Gurdjieff view the Institute as something experimental? That is one of Mr. Gurdjieff's aims the acquiring of some knowledge through the Institute, or is it the putting into practice of a system that he has already completed during his life? The answer: the putting into practice of a system I completed during my life, but at the same time there are also other aims. And these series of question and answers, it's not common knowledge, I wouldn't say. Of course, if you've read the book, Our Life with Mr. Gurdjieff, you'll know, but in no other of the canonical texts and other series of writings and memoirs and biographies have I ever come across this series of questionings that the English pupils give to Gurdjieff. And so it's very helpful, to broaden your perspective. And so Gurdjieff is saying that he has completed this system, he's developed this system, but at the same time, there are also other aims, and I imagine that would be the bringing of other people, the bringing of others to higher states of consciousness so that they in turn can go out into the world. And of course, this would have happened through Ouspensky, Jean de Salzman, and all of the other names that I could list. So, question 4. Why does Mr. Gurdjieff put so much emphasis on physical work? Is it temporary or permanent? Answer: temporary. For most of the people now gathered in the Institute, the physical work is indispensable, but it is only a period of the whole plan of the work. Question 5. Is the attainment of any kind of occult possibilities one of the subjects of this education? Answer: and this is beautiful. Truth is one. It existed always and is as old as the word itself, or the world itself, sorry. I'll start again. Truth is one. It existed always and is as old as the world itself. In distant times there existed a real knowledge, but owing to all kinds of life circumstances, political and economic, it was lost and only fragments of it remain. These remains I collected with other people. We learned of them and found them through people, monuments, customs, literature, our own experiments, comparisons, and so on. And that is a wonderful quote. Truth is one. It existed always and is as old as the world itself. And this is, I think, what I'm alluding to when I talk about the syncretic threads that run through all of these traditions. Truth is one. It's always existed and is as old as the world itself. And all of the religious and philosophical traditions, when you reach back into time, they would have drawn on this thread. And then as time progresses and history advances, they would weave, wonderful tapestries with the culture and the people within them. But they come from the same source. That's my view, my opinion. And everyone's entitled to their own. Question 6. What is the origin of this system? Has Mr. Gurdjieff personally acquired it, or has it been transmitted to him? Here, Mr. Gurdjieff did not answer. And this is de Hartmann speaking. And then in brackets, I wish to say that Mr. Gurdjieff's silence was not meant to avoid the question. It was obvious that he felt that the question had already been answered, in other words. So he just sat quietly for a bit and didn't say anything. Question 7. What does Mr. Gurdjieff hope to do in Europe? What is his opinion about the value of Western science? Why has Mr. Gurdjieff chosen Paris? Answer. I chose Paris because it is a centre of Europe, and I have thought for a long time that an institute was necessary here. It is only political circumstances that have held that up for 2 years, and of course this was World War I and the Russian Revolution, rather trying times for Mr. Gurdjieff and the Institute and his followers. From the West, I wished to take the knowledge that the East could not give me. From the East, I took theory, from the West, practice. That which is in the East did not exist in the West, and vice versa. That is why each alone has no value. Together, they complete each other. Another powerful concept that Eastern and Western, and they need to combine and mold within the individual, within society and culture, so that you can take the benefits from both of them. Question 8. What made Mr. Gurdjieff choose his pupils? Did he think he would produce teachers from some of them? Can they begin to be as he is? Answer. Each pupil is a teacher to the one who stands lower than he. Everybody can become like me, only if they wish to suffer and work, as I did. More sort of confirmation of what's possible. Everybody can become like me, only if they wish to suffer and work as I did. The conscious labours and intentional suffering, nothing is come for free. Evolution doesn't come about, naturally. One has to work for it, as we've been talking about in the last couple of Bennett's talks on Beelzebub stream. Buddha says, swim against the current. Jesus says, the way is narrow, to these higher evolutionary principles and these higher things. And it's possible. It's the potential is within each one of us. And if you've become interested in these ideas and are here maybe listening, then again, like he says, I think the whole framework is laid out within all of the books together. Although there's no one manual and guidebook, one can piece together all of the things necessary through study and, as he said, learning and experience. Question 9. Is Mr. Gurdjieff alone in this undertaking, or is he part of an already existing group? Answer. Alone. All of my doings are personal. Those who came before are scattered around the world, and I have lost contact with them. Question 10. Does the teaching of Mr. Gurdjieff form part of some historical school still in existence? Was the knowledge that he possesses over the property of a Was the knowledge he possesses ever the property of a ruling caste? And was there any kind of civilization founded on it? For example, was there in India a government in the hands of people who wished to put into practice the ideas of Mr. Gurdjieff? Answer. Tibet is an example where 10 years ago all government was in the hands of the monks, but they couldn't put my ideas into practice because my teaching was not known to them. My teaching is my own. It combines all the evidence of ancient truth that I collected in my travels with all the knowledge that I have acquired through my own personal work. And again, a great insight into the formulation of Gurdjieff's ideas. And here Graham has a wonderful quote that I was trying to think of, but Graham's read my mind. G said, "Take the understanding of the East and the knowledge of the West." And there's many similar sort of quotations about combining East and West. But here, evidence of ancient truth that I collected in my travels. So if you verify the things that Gurdjieff speaks about and exhorts you to experience and verify for yourself, then, as I said a few moments ago with one of the answers, you can have something that is your own, that cannot be taken away, because that's the truth, isn't it? If you have truth, it doesn't matter what anyone else is saying or doing or their opinions. You've got the truth, and it's the same with the Platonic dialogues with Plato. Truth is one, and all of the traditions are sort of, they grow and develop from it. The final question. Question 11. What is Mr. Gurdjieff's doctrine about necessity, free will, and death? Can people in general become immortal, or only some of them? For those who have not acquired immortality, what will happen to them? Does there exist for them something like reincarnation or eternal recurrence? Answer. Yes and no. Those people who have a soul are immortal, but not everyone has a soul. A man is born without a soul, with only the possibility of acquiring one. He has to earn it during his lifetime. For those who have not acquired a soul, nothing happens to them. They live and they die. Individuals die, but the atoms live, because in the world nothing ceases to live. But even immortal souls exist in different stages. Full immortality is quite unique, and there's, I think Olga de Hartmann adds some subtext to this. In general, in his discussions with us, Mr. Gurdjieff never used the word soul. He only referred to a something. However, in his discussions with these new people, it was necessary for him to use words that they would understand, and for that reason, he used the word soul. And when I was reading this the other evening, that section there about how you need to grow a soul, how you need to develop a soul, this is probably one of the most interesting aspects of the work for me, because, of course, in the Platonic dialogues and in Sanatana Dharma, in the Bhagavad Gita, they would argue that everyone and everything has a soul, and Gurdjieff is here saying that not everyone's born with a soul. You have to acquire it by your own efforts. And what that passage makes me think of is this concept that people speak about now, NPCs, right? Non-player characters. And it's quite sad, really, that it's quite rude, I suppose, and insulting to be referred to as an NPC, a non-player character. But of course, to extend the analogy of the video game, of course, everyone is the main character of their own story, right? I'm mine, and you listening, you're the center of the story. You're the hero. But some people, again, as we learn from In Search of the Miraculous and Beelzebub's Tales, most people go through life as machines, asleep, just reacting to external stimulus from the cradle to the grave, and they never awaken, they never have a glimpse of consciousness, or if they do, only in patches. And so these people would be called NPCs, right? You could refer to them as non-player characters, and maybe this work, this fourth way is the way to develop the soul. And as Gurdjieff says, I'll just read it again. From question 2, what is his own and cannot be taken away from him and is always his? This does not exist yet. And I think this must be what Gurdjieff's referring to. Only when this begins to exist is it possible for these periods of despair to disappear. So perhaps this is what he's speaking about, that what is his own and cannot be taken away from him and is always his, this does not yet exist. So people come without ever having a moment of self-observation, of self-remembering, And only when that begins to occur more and more regularly, when you can observe the observer, if you like, the watcher, the master, in the analogy of the horse and carriage, then you have something that is your own. And so that's what I wanted to share with you today. The English pupils that Ouspensky sent over, of course, Gurdjieff would have been able to perceive the primary focus of these English pupils coming from Ouspensky. Of course, it's all very heady and intellectual, as you would expect from Ouspensky's pupils, but when you would go to the Prieuré, it would require all the centers to come in. It's not just intellectual speculations, it's hard manual labor, good food, but not enough to be satiated, to be full, to gain weight, and intense efforts all day. And this is the way to consciousness, I suppose. And yes, it's easy to do it on your own, but when you're on your own, you can easily justify, like he was saying about the foreign mind. The foreign mind can come in and it's easy to justify to yourself, oh, I've had a busy morning, I'm just going to rest for the afternoon, or oh, I did loads yesterday, I'm going to have a day off today. Whereas if you're in a community like the Prieuré in Fontainebleau, in a sense, you still have a will, but in a sense, you've submitted it to Gurdjieff. Gurdjieff is given the day's program, and if you're loitering, as we learned in one of our earlier readings, if you're loitering around the kitchen, smoking and drinking coffee, then probably Gurdjieff wouldn't say much, but he'd just look at you, and give you a look, and then walk off, and that would be enough for a pang of conscience. And so, yeah, I wanted to share that because, as I said, that question and answer session with Gurdjieff it's not in any other books, and I think some of those answers can be very helpful, particularly the practical aspects of the work. And Sophia says, wow, NPC as opposed to avatar, modern terminology. And yes, avatars, you could argue that everyone's an avatar, isn't it? Inhabiting this physical body, this body with the three brains. And Laurie says awakening is an ongoing process, it seems, on and on. And yeah, I think that's it, isn't it, Laurie? There's no goal, there's no summit, there's no sort of end. As long as you live, you're still learning, you're still growing, you're still increasing your horizons and your consciousness and awakening. And so that's why it's the gift that keeps on giving, right? Because there's no end. There's a bottomless hole or an infinite mountain that one can climb up, always learning, always growing and developing. And with different experiences, trials, tribulations, joys and sorrows, we can navigate these with the help of these teachings and increased understanding. And I hope these readings and these little talks give you motivation to go away and go back into the texts, go back into yourself, whether that's through meditation or contemplation or just self-observation and self-remembering. I hope that it brings a little bit more peace into your life, a little bit more understanding to your days. And as we learned in one of those early questions, to broaden your horizons, because a horizon by its nature is vast and broad, isn't it? And so if you've got blinkers on and your horizon is just this, then take the blinkers off, right? Anyway, that's what I wanted to share today. Thanks for joining. I hope you enjoyed and benefited from something from one of those questions. But for now, have a great rest of the week. Thanks for joining. Look after yourselves. Take care. And I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.